If you're a man or a father, watch this video.
How good the dad
is. He can't
he can't be everything.
The disrespect of men. Nobody says mom isn't enough, but having a good father in your life isn't enough.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor and was a great guy and would call me out. You need that. To show empathy and kindness.
In 2025, liberals are evil, and the agenda is to get rid of masculine men.
You need that person in your friend group so that if you then have a boy who is gay or non-binary.
You do that by A, trying your best to make as many men ubiquitous as possible, demonizing masculinity, and C, devaluing men.
I'm not gay, but I like my boys more than girls. I love you too. Okay. Yeah.
Have you ever wondered, how did sexual perversion, homosexuality, surge in such a short time? The sudden explosion of Sodom and Gomorrah all around the world in mainstream. All these are happening in less than 30 years. 30 years ago, the world held a high standard when it comes to morality, but today we are seeing things that were punishable in the past by law, things that were called abomination, things that were referred to as taboos, have become mainstream. In fact, there are communities, where people could be beaten or killed for certain behaviors. But today it is being celebrated. Today there are people who call themselves celebrities and they are being admired by the youth for such behaviors. And so we must ask ourselves, how did this come about? Where is all these things coming from? Why is there a unity in the negative progression of things all over the world? If we look at every family, every nation, the thing we have in common is the television screen, the black screen, mobile phone. And it has found its way into every household. And eventually it has been weaponized as a tool to access the minds and the hearts of men, through the eye gates and through the ear gates. Once this thing came into use, movies like Medin started to emerge under the guise of comedy, and remember that these individuals, first of all, have sold their souls for riches and have submitted themselves as puppets in the hand of the enemy to deceive as many as possible to hell, to lead many astray. And these movies have been slowly used to desensitize the population generation after generation for over 30 years, 20 years plus, and have normalized the things that were found, that are called abomination by God. These things, that were referred to as abomination in the sight of God has been normalized through movies, through the Hollywood movies. You must understand that the enemy works in a subtle manner, never in an obvious form. Through these movies, gradually with every movie that was released, the men began to loosen their guard. Things that were abominations slowly began to seep in. The parents, the fathers, the government, those who were supposed to protect the society became silent, all being seduced by the serpent through entertainment, through comedy. People, the society, at large began to drink from the cup of immorality, from the cup of perversion, from the cup of Babylon, from the cup of Hollywood. So gradually, with every movie, the enemy, seeped into the society through the mind gates, through the ear gates. So, the way of living began to change. If you look at the women and the men of 1980s, 1990s, and you look at the generation of today, you see a big difference. And what is the underlying factor? It is the television screen, the movies that we have been watching, consuming, being used to desensitize us over the years. So people began to slowly love what was evil, what was bad, became normal. If you watch movie of killing, for example, for a long time, it will get to a point where killing is no longer a big deal to you. That's the same thing that has been done to each and every one of us over the years. We've been desensitized to see evil as good and good as evil, forgetting that Hollywood worships Baal through sexual rituals, before the movie, after the movie. And it is by the influence of these spirits, these demons, that these movies are made, which gives them legal ground to access anyone who watches them. And these things are in every household at the global scale. So you have to think of how much influence the enemy has at the global scale through the black screen. And so while people enjoyed, the entertainment, enjoyed the comedy, enjoyed the action movies, they were unaware of the subtle, subconscious indoctrination that was taking place. And year after year, with every movie, they increased the seriousness of these movies. Remember, these things are being downloaded into the mind gates, the ear gates, and men are drunk with lust, drunk with all forms of, defilement, pollution. The Bible says, if the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Meaning, if the light in you, the knowledge that is in you is darkness, how great is that knowledge? How deep is that darkness? So when you keep feeding yourself with these Hollywood movies, you're filling yourself with darkness, with the knowledge of darkness. The world has been drunk with the wine of fornication, with the wine of abomination, by Babylon, by Hollywood, from the marine kingdom. And that is what we are seeing the trend today. Transgender, with cross-dressing, all these stems from movies. All these things stems from the programming that has been planted like seed over the years. Now they are bearing fruit. All it took was just one generation, neglecting one generation. And all we are seeing now is the fruit of what has been planted from 30 years ago, subtly through movies. The drug use, the violence, all these are coming from the movies. So not just is Hollywood influencing your children, influencing your family, influencing the society at large, it is also backed by the influence of spirits, of altars. We are seeing the rise in promiscuity, even amongst women who do not need anything from men, money and all that. Yet they are going into the hookup culture. Why is this so? Because the programming has to find expression. And these things has been embedded, buried, planted, from a very young age. So these behaviors must find expression. For example, ask yourself, did your parents or your grandparents ever had tattoos? So where did this generation learn to use tattoos? They all came from movies. They all came from things that entered the eyes and the mind gates. Fast forward to today, we can see that 90% of movies in Netflix must have someone who is representing the queer community, the LGBTQ. And 90% of movies must have some form of sexual scene. Just go to Netflix now and check this out. Children from 30 years ago are now adults today, and some of them are now parents. And that is why we are seeing what we are seeing in the society, slowly building up a debased mind at the global scale. Remember, the mind is just like a computer system. What you behold is what you become. Garbage in, garbage out. That's why the minds of this generation has been hacked into. And with every dose of movie, men and women have been seduced and indoctrinated or programmed into becoming lesbians, to have a different mentality. Now, my point is this. If the Lord tarries, how would 30 years from now look like? The enemy already knows to get to the next generation, all he needs is to start planting seed today, on time. So if you're a parent, you need to understand that the target is your children. And the agenda is to feminize an entire generation, to convert an entire generation to effeminate. Back in the old days when men were men, there used to be resistance against what was seen today from the government, in order for the Antichrist to have full control over the people, over the world, they need to reduce the power, the masculinity of the men by feminizing the next generation. And that is why we are seeing the attack in food, foods being polluted with chemicals, to change the hormones in men and women. All this is to eliminate, the point of defense, to remove the resistance from the society at large. And resistance can only come from men who are strong in mind and who are in their masculine energy and who are submitted to God. That is why you're seeing all forms of attack, through the mind gate, the ear gate, reducing the power of men through, excess sex, the drug use. All these things are aiming at, destroying the masculinity in the men. Okay, so that the Antichrist or the beast system or the one world government can fully function.